where pilgrims have been flocking for centuries to show their devotion to Ireland's female patron saint. Tomorrow night marks the return of Ireland's longest-running documentary series, Would You Believe? My next guest, Mick Peelo, has been a reporter on the series for 19 years, and his award-winning Cardinal Secrets was a key step in the uncovering of the full story of clerical sex abuse. He's joining me in studio today to discuss tomorrow night's programme, Unspeakable Crimes, which follows a 6-month investigation in how the Vatican blocked Irish bishops from removing and reporting paedophile priests. And before we talk to Mick, let's have a look at a clip from the programme.
Shortly after the bishops had publicly announced their new guidelines and reporting policies, behind the scenes, the Vatican hit them with a bombshell. Would You Believe has obtained a strictly confidential letter that the Vatican sent to all the Irish bishops in 1997. This letter tells them in no uncertain terms that the Vatican doesn't approve of their new guidelines, and it certainly doesn't want them reporting all allegations against priests to the police.
The congregation wishes to emphasize the need for this document to conform to the canonical norms presently in force. In particular, the situation of mandatory reporting gives rise to serious reservations of both a moral and canonical nature.
If the Irish bishops followed their guidelines, the Vatican would support the accused priest if he appealed to Rome. The Vatican was making it very clear that it was the priest, not the child, should be centre stage.
Mick Peelo, this makes the situation even worse, doesn't it, from what we now understand? You're now telling us quite clearly that the Vatican was saying to Des Connell and the other bishops, you cannot defrock Tony Walsh.
Yes, yeah, you can't defrock Tony Walsh on the basis the way you have defrocked him. Also, that you can't be reporting willy-nilly allegations against priests to the police. You can't remove priests because you'll infringe on their rights and their good name. And basically was saying that the guidelines that they had in 1996, which were quite radical, because for the first time the Irish bishops were getting their house in order, for the first time they saw that child protection was more important than priests' rights. And they got it right, but the Vatican was telling them, sorry lads, we're not backing you up. And that if you do follow those guidelines, you'll be embarrassed. Not only embarrassed, but we may even overturn the decisions you make. And that actually did happen. And
the Vatican sent an emissary to a meeting of the hierarchy, which ended in, was it Desmond Connell banging the table saying this is an outrageous position for the Vatican to adopt?
Yeah, I suppose if you look at the context of it, Joe, you see what the context of this. I suppose if we were to go back, even just go back a step further and go back and, well, that's going back to the mid to late 90s, right? But even, let's see that in the context. You had the Murphy Report, okay? The revelations of the Murphy Report, which is the investigation of the Dublin Diocese, which showed there was systemic failure on the part of the Irish bishops, okay? The Irish hierarchy and the Irish Church hit an all-time low then. That's only about 2009, wasn't it, the revelation of the Murphy Report? Yeah. So the Pope then, I mean, you're in a situation where the moral authority of the Irish bishops and the Irish Church is just rock bottom. So what's going to ever restore that? The way the Vatican saw the seriousness of that, and they said the only way that can be restored is the top man intervenes. An unprecedented letter was sent to the Catholics of Ireland. Basically, a very good letter, you know, from the Pope himself, basically saying, blaming the Irish bishops for the whole problem. It was the Irish bishops that caused the problem.
But your letter reveals that the Vatican gave the Irish bishops instructions to do what they're now criticising them for doing.
What we uncovered in the documentary makes a mockery of the Pope's letter in relation to him blaming the bishops, because now we know that the Irish bishops behaved exactly like bishops everywhere. And what have they all got in common? The Vatican. Because the culture of confidentiality and secrecy, the culture that put the priest first, came from the Vatican. And that was when you talk about Des Connell banging the table there, that was at a meeting in Sligo when Cardinal Castrillon Hoyos, who was the prefect for the Congregation of the Clergy, in the Vatican, they have these departments. And so when a priest appeals to Rome, say in terms of an allegation of abuse against him, and he's not happy with a decision by a local church court, the Congregation for the Clergy generally takes that on board. And Castrilian Hoyos obviously was taking his job very seriously. He was a cardinal. He came to the bishops in 1999 and told them, or it was 1998, and he told them basically, the priest's rights are paramount. You've got to accept that the priest's rights are important here.
So why do we have apostolic visitators, Cormac Murphy O'Connor, going around Dundalk, Newry, Armagh this past week, saying, I want the views of the laity on the behaviour of the bishops, and they were only obeying orders? And in fact, as emerged in your piece, a lot of them tried to disobey in fairness to them.
Well, in fairness to some of the bishops, they actually did stand up to the Vatican, and behind the scenes they were in conflict with the Vatican and battling with the Vatican in relation to this whole issue. And yeah, it seems very strange that the Vatican is sending apostolic visitators to Ireland to investigate the Irish Church and to assist the Irish Church in renewal, when in fact it was the Vatican that was causing the problem in the first place. So it does seem very strange. There's a lot of questions to be asked about why this visitation, who are these apostolic visitators representing, and what is it really about? Okay,
it's a fascinating programme, and it raises many other issues as well. Cardinal Ratzinger, subsequently Pope Benedict, the behaviour with the Legionnaires of Christ, Massey Elmer, that whole episode has yet to be fully investigated, and they're a big organisation in Ireland as well, as you know. But it's a fascinating programme, and it was a lot of work obviously went into it. So thanks to Mick Peelo, and you can see that Would You Believe documentary, Unspeakable Crimes, on RT1 tomorrow night at 10:35. Thanks to all my guests today.